I want to write a story about your death. I want to follow you to the end of your life. Are you comfortable with that? I'd heard about the in-between probably even a couple of years ago, maybe longer, and had always wanted to really take a deep look at it and at its mission. They take people who are homeless and who are dying or who are in desperate need of medical care, and they put them in a safe place, and they care for them, and they love them to the end. In about 2015, there was a palliative care nurse up at Huntsman Cancer Institute named Deborah Thorpe. They were treating patients who didn't have homes, who had cancer, who could get care because there was charity care for them. But you'd give them chemotherapy or whatever, you'd get them past a certain stage of acute illness, but their situation was still bad, and then you would let them out in downtown Salt Lake City so that they could go back wherever they were living on the street. So she got together with some people, including a fellow from the 4th Street Clinic, and they decided that they would see if they could find a place where they could take a dozen people who were dying, who were very, very fragile and who had no homes, and keep them safe and give them a dignified, decent death, which is a kind of death that virtually everybody wants. And they got a little convent down on Goshen Street, and that's what they did. And then it became such a success that they grew. And now they're in what used to be an assisted living center where they've got 50 people, 25 of them recuperating and 25 of them who are going to die probably. And they take care of all of them. In the course of 17 months, we met a whole bunch of people at the in-between. We met people who were there for recuperative care. We met people who were terminally ill. We met people who were kind of passing through. Their situations changed. The woman who's a death doula there, Kimberly Peterson, came to the in-between to die, and through the good care and the food and good sleep and finding friends, she blossomed, and she's alive, 4 years after she got there, and serves as a resident manager and as the death doula because of the companionship and because of the place. If she had not had a safe place to go to get better, then she would probably be dead, and it would probably have been a really tragic death on the streets. We met John O'Rourke, who's a fellow who's very smart and very funny and very sweet. And he came to the in-between because he was dying of rheumatic heart failure. And he had so many challenges. He fell a lot. He'd get confused a lot. He had really weird dreams. He dreamed that he was fighting with the devil sometimes, and he worried about what that said about the state of his soul as he approached the end of life. But he was also really funny. We met Paul, who was particularly sweet. He died while we were covering this story at the in-between, and he had come to the in-between because he had COPD and he had heart failure. And his life had just sort of gone downhill. He had had a bunch of different jobs that were decent jobs, and he was supporting his family and he was doing well. And then he was a CNA, and he lifted a patient who was quite heavy, and he hurt his back. And he ended up having some treatment for his back that he ended up in chronic pain, and then he ended up, like so many Americans have in these last few years, on medication that he became addicted to. And for the rest of his life, he battled addictions. So his journey was a really sad journey, because when you're battling addictions and you're sick and you're homeless, you've got a whole bunch of issues and bad things going on. But at the in-between, he made friends. He had every one of the volunteers there just absolutely loved Paul. And he was this gentle, soft-spoken man who wrote all kinds of poetry and liked to read it to people. He liked to tell stories. He was just a tender guy, and there were lots of tender people at the in-between. People sometimes tend to be afraid of homeless people. They tend to think that they will be in danger if they welcome them into their communities or if they don't skirt them somehow. And actually, what I learned at the in-between is that people are very much alike, whether you have a house, you don't have a house. If you are given love and trust and friendship, A lot of the times, that's all it takes to completely turn a life around. People just want to be cared about, and the in-between is a place where people were very cared about. I have always tried in my career to keep one beacon in mind, and that is that I have a position that allows me to give voice to people who don't have a voice. And it is hard to find a group of people who have less of a voice than people who are dying homeless in our community. So this is one of the greatest honors of my life, to be able to tell this story. I think that the real ultimate message that I hope people get from this story is that they could be part of it. They could be part of the solution. You have different comfort levels. We were talking in the office about people with different comfort levels to get involved. There are people that were called the Costco ladies because they stopped and picked up groceries when they went to Costco. There are people who show up and vacuum. There are people who give time, people who give money, people who stop by to buy jewelry that's made there that contributes to the money that's raised there. To me, I think, besides realizing how similar we are and how our basic needs are the same for comfort, for love, for caring, the big message to me was that we can all pick up a starfish. And it's pretty easy to do in this kind of a setting because there's so many needs that some talent that you have or some gift that you have or some resource that you have could be helpful. I have always been comfortable with people who are a little bit different and whose situations are different than mine. And so I don't think that I had the level of discomfort that some people would have. But what it emphasized for me is that people are really all the same. We have basic needs. We have need for a safe place when we're feeling weak and when we're kind of lost. We have need for basic treatment if we're sick. We have need for food. And most of all, we have need for people who care about us. We have need for connections.